He strutted into the restaurant like he owned the place, gold watch flashing, sunglasses still on indoors, voice loud enough to make heads turn. To him, the world was divided into two kinds of people, those who served and those who were served. When a waiter approached with a polite smile and a notepad, he didn't see a human being. He saw a target. "Move faster. Can't you see who you're serving?" he barked. But what he didn't realize was that the man holding the tray wasn't a waiter at all. He was the real owner, the silent architect of everything around him, watching arrogance walk right into its own lesson. The restaurant glowed softly with warm amber lights, polished marble floors reflecting chandeliers like rippling gold. Every corner whispered luxury, from the velvet chairs to the grand piano humming a quiet tune in the corner. It was the kind of place where people came not just to eat, but to be seen. And tonight, Daniel wanted to be seen. He leaned back his chair, arms stretched over the side like a man posing for an invisible camera. His friends laughed loudly at his jokes, fake laughter that echoed with insecurity. He loved that sound. It made him feel powerful. "Can you believe this place?" Daniel said, tapping his glass impatiently. "They call this fine dining, and yet the staff looks like they were picked off the street." His friends exchanged awkward glances, but nodded along, afraid to disagree. The waiter, a calm man in his late 40s, approached with a composed smile. "Good evening, sir. Would you like to begin with the chef's special or browse the menu first?" he asked politely. Daniel scoffed. "How about you do your job and bring me something worth the price? I don't need recommendations from someone who can't even pronounce half the menu." The waiter paused for just a moment, his eyes soft but steady. "Of course, sir," he replied. "Right away." He turned and walked toward the kitchen, his steps measured, his expression unreadable. Daniel grinned smugly and leaned back again. "See that? That's the problem with people these days. No class, no ambition. I swear, if I were running this place, I'd fire half of them." One of his friends chuckled nervously. "Maybe the manager will hear you." "I hope he does," Daniel said. "Maybe then something will change." But what Daniel didn't know was that the manager had already heard, and so had the owner. Because the man he just insulted wasn't a waiter at all. His name was Mr. Rahim, the founder of the restaurant, a man who had built the entire establishment with his own hands. Years ago, he had been a real waiter, serving tables, cleaning floors, dreaming of a place where dignity wasn't decided by uniform. And tonight, he decided to spend an evening undercover, blending in with his staff to understand their struggles firsthand. Back in the kitchen, Rahim set the tray down gently, his expression calm. One of the real waiters, a young boy named Arif, looked up, concerned. "Sir, are you okay? The guy was really rude." Rahim smiled faintly. "Ifeye mitwursh. Don't worry about me." Arif frowned. "You shouldn't have to deal with people like that. He doesn't know who you are." "That's exactly the point," Rahim replied. "People should treat others with respect, not because of who they are, but because it's right." He turned back toward the dining hall, his mind quiet but focused. Arrogance never surprised him anymore, but it always disappointed him. As he walked out again, carrying Daniel's food, he couldn't help but think of his younger days. Days when he'd been insulted for having calloused hands, for wearing an apron, for working double shifts just to survive. He had promised himself that when he built his own business, he'd never let his employees feel small. Yet tonight, one man's pride was trying to undo that peace. At table 7, Daniel was still talking loudly. "You know, I almost bought this building once," he said, grinning. "Would have turned it into something better. But hey, I guess someone beat me to it." Rahim arrived quietly with the food. "Your meal, sir," he said, placing the dish carefully. Daniel looked at the plate, unimpressed. "This is it? For the price you're charging, I expected a masterpiece." Rahim smiled gently. "Sometimes the simplest things are the most meaningful, sir." "Yeah, well, keep your philosophy to yourself," Daniel snapped. "Just make sure my drink doesn't take another century to arrive." The people at the nearby tables began to glance over, whispers passing through the air. Some looked uncomfortable. Others simply watched, curious to see how the waiter would react. But Rahim didn't flinch. He bowed slightly and said, "Right away, sir." When he returned to the kitchen, Arif followed him, anger in his eyes. Sir, why don't you tell him who you are? He doesn't deserve this respect. Raheem took a deep breath. Because respect is not something I give based on what others deserve. It's who I am. And besides, people reveal themselves in how they treat others. He's showing the world his true face. As Raheem prepared to deliver Daniel's drink, something unexpected happened. The restaurant's general manager, unaware of the situation, walked over to check on the new waiter. Mr. Raheem, sir, he started catching himself. Raheem raised a quiet hand. Not now. I'm just serving tonight. The manager nodded quickly and stepped back, realizing the lesson unfolding before his eyes. Back at the table, Daniel was telling another story about how hard work was overrated and how some people just didn't have what it takes. The irony hung in the air like perfume. His friends laughed awkwardly again, their smiles thin, their eyes darting nervously toward Raheem as he placed the glass down. Raheem looked at Daniel for a brief moment, not with anger, but with a kind of calm curiosity, the kind that comes from understanding something deeper. "Here's your drink, sir," he said softly. Daniel raised an eyebrow. "Finally, took you long enough." He took a sip, leaned back, and smirked. "Now that's better. Maybe you're learning." Raheem nodded once. "We all learn, sir. Some sooner than others." For the first time that evening, Daniel's smile faltered just for a second. Something in the waiter's tone, the quiet confidence, unsettled him. But he brushed it off with a laugh. "You've got jokes now? Stick to your job, buddy." As Raheem walked away, the piano player softly shifted into a new tune, slower, deeper, echoing like the heartbeat of the room. The lights seemed dimmer now, the laughter quieter. And though Daniel didn't know it yet, the night was only getting started. The tables would soon turn, not just metaphorically, but in ways he'd never expect. Because sometimes life doesn't give you warnings before it teaches you a lesson. It simply hands you a mirror and waits for you to look. The next course arrived with a hush, and the restaurant seemed to lean in, as if the walls themselves were listening. Raheem continued moving between tables with the same steady grace, refilling water, checking on guests, making small adjustments only an owner would notice. A wobbly chair, a draft near the entrance, a lamp angled too harshly over a child's face. He did it all without fanfare, invisible yet essential. Daniel watched him with a smirk, mistaking patience for weakness. The show in his mind must go on. At Daniel's table, the conversation shifted from bragging to baiting. "Tell me," he called out, waving two fingers in the air, "how much do you make an hour? Be honest." A few diners turned their heads. The question didn't seek an answer. It sought dominance. Raheem approached, not rushing, not slowing, just arriving like the tide. "I make enough to take care of what matters," he said. Daniel laughed. "So nothing then?" "I thought so. Look, my friends and I, we actually invest in businesses. Maybe one day, when you learn to keep up, I'll let you shadow my driver." Good experience. His friends tried to smile, but their eyes revealed fatigue. One of them, Sana, finally spoke. "Daniel, enough. You're making a scene." Her voice was gentle but firm. The voice of someone who still believed he could be better than this. He shrugged. "Relax. I'm just teasing. They're used to it." Raheem set a basket of warm bread on the table. "Respect is never something people get used to losing," he said. "Not if they want to stay human." For a moment, the restaurant stilled again. Then the piano lilted into a hopeful melody, like a reminder that elegance doesn't require cruelty. Daniel rolled his eyes, but avoided Raheem's gaze. He focused on his phone, scrolling, hunting for validation in pixels. Across the room, a family celebrated a birthday. Modest candles, a camera that struggled to focus, a grandmother who laughed with her whole body. Raheem stopped by, clapped with them, and slipped a small dessert to the grandmother on the house. He did it the way sunlight finds a window, quietly, generously. Several guests noticed. One whispered, "He must be a senior waiter," and smiled. In the kitchen, the staff moved with the choreography of care. Arif prepped salads, Farzana checked plating, the sous chef counted orders like beats in a song. The general manager approached Raheem again, whispering, "He's causing guests to complain." "Security?" "Not yet," Raheem said. "We'll let the evening show the truth." but make sure tables near him are comfortable. Daniel called again. Waiter, over here. We have a problem. He held up a fork as if displaying a crime scene. This is smudged. In a place like this? Where are you running? A roadside stall. Rahim took the fork, inspected it calmly, and replaced it with one from a nearby station. Apologies for the oversight, he said. Thank you for pointing it out. Yeah, you should thank me twice, Daniel replied. Without people like me, places like this slide. Sanaa flinched. Why are you like this? Like what? Daniel asked. Loud, she said. Loud where kindness should speak. Daniel smirked at the poetry of her rebuke, then raised his glass. To lessons, then? Maybe he'll learn one tonight. He will, Rahim said. We all will. Moments later, a courier arrived at the entrance with 2 boxes and a folder. The manager signed and carried them to the back office. Rahim excused himself briefly, opened the folder. Inside were renovation permits and an award notification addressed to him. Entrepreneur of the Year. He closed it quietly. The success didn't inflate him. It grounded him. He had worked for every brick of this place. When he stepped back onto the floor, he saw Arif at table 7, hands trembling as he cleared plates. Daniel watched the boy fumble a glass, then clapped mockingly. Hey, careful. If you ruin my suit, you'll be paying me for a month. Arif froze, eyes wide. Rahim moved in, steady and protective. I'll take it from here, Arif. He placed a hand on the boy's shoulder. Go help in the kitchen. Daniel leaned forward, predatory curiosity flashing. Oh, there it is. The hierarchy. So you're not just a waiter, you're the head waiter. Thought you had that leader energy. Tell me, boss, how does it feel to manage people who wear aprons for a living? It feels like responsibility, Rahim said simply. Responsibility? Daniel scoffed. In this job? In any job done with pride, Rahim replied. In building what feeds families, what brings people together, what gives nights like this meaning. Sanaa looked at him, moved by something she couldn't name. Maybe you should ask him his story before judging him, she said to Daniel. Daniel laughed. Fine. Tell us your big, inspirational story, waiter. Give us the Hollywood version. Rahim's eyes were calm. Another time, he said softly. Stories deserve ears ready to listen. A sudden crash cut through the room. A champagne flute fell at a nearby table, startling a child. Rahim was there instantly, crouching to gather shards with a folded cloth so no one would step on them. No sighs, no frustration, just quiet action. The family thanked him, and as he rose, the pianist changed tune again, a slow, dignified melody. The rhythm of the night resumed, but something in the air had changed. Daniel's friends were quieter now. His jokes fell flat. He looked around, noticing the subtle distance people had placed between themselves and his noise. He couldn't name it, but respect had already shifted. He signaled again. Waiter, one more bottle, your best, and send the bill to my company. Rahim nodded. Of course. And hurry, Daniel added. I'm thinking of buying the place across the street. Might bash this one out of business. Rahim tilted his head. Competition can be healthy when it makes everyone better, or when it crushes the weak, Daniel said, smiling. Strength isn't loud, Rahim replied. It's consistent. Daniel's tone faltered for the first time. You talk like a man who's not afraid to lose. I've lost many times, Rahim said. That's why I'm not afraid. Sanaa leaned in. What did you lose? Rahim looked toward the kitchen, where laughter and hard work blended. Time, but never the meaning of it. The last plates arrived, pastries filled with cream, tarts, and chocolate torts. Daniel pushed his away. Too sweet. Like this service. Rahim nodded. Would you like something sharper? Lemon, perhaps. I'd like truth, Daniel said suddenly. You act like a philosopher, but you're still wearing that apron. Tell me why. Rahim smiled faintly. Because titles don't define service. Character does. And yours? Daniel asked. Still forming, Rahim said. Every day. The silence between them deepened. Not tense, but revealing. Then Daniel leaned back and grinned. Fine, Sage. Give me the owner. I want to give him feedback. And this time, let's see if anyone in this place can actually impress me. Rahim held his gaze for a moment that stretched like a hell breath. As you wish, sir. He turned, walked to the manager and whispered, "Gather the floor staff by table 7. 2 minutes." The manager froze, then nodded. Arif's eyes widened. Farzana stopped mid-task. Even the pianist sensed the moment and let the last note linger like suspense itself. When Rahim returned, the staff stood in a calm semicircle near Daniel's table. Diners hushed instinctively. Daniel smirked, thinking the spectacle was his victory. Rahim reached for the knot of his apron, untying it slowly, each movement deliberate, symbolic. He folded the cloth neatly, set it on a tray, and straightened his back. "You asked for the owner," he said, voice carrying through the stillness. Daniel frowned. "Yeah, so?" Rahim met his eyes, unblinking. "I'm here." The room froze. Then realization rippled through the crowd, through the staff who stood taller now, through the guests exchanging astonished glances, through Sanaa who exhaled a trembling laugh. Daniel blinked, color draining from his face. "You," he stammered. "Me," Rahim said quietly. "The same hands that cleared your glass built this place. The same feet that served you walked this floor when it was still dust. And the same apron you mocked, I wore it the day this restaurant opened. Because service is not beneath ownership. It is the foundation of it." For a moment, silence filled every corner of the restaurant, the kind that makes even air hesitate to move. Forks froze midair. Conversations halted. All that remained was the quiet hum of the ceiling fans and the heavy beat of Daniel's pulse in his own ears. He stared at Rahim, disbelief etched across his face. His lips parted, but no words came out. The man he had mocked, belittled, and humiliated for the past hour was the very man who owned everything he had tried to dominate. Rahim stood there, calm as stone, but his eyes spoke of years of endurance, the kind that reshapes pride into wisdom. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. His presence carried the weight of truth. "You see, Daniel," Rahim began quietly, "respect costs nothing, yet it tells everything about a person. Tonight, I wore an apron, not to test anyone, but to remind myself where I came from. And you reminded me why humility matters." Daniel's throat tightened. I didn't know," he muttered. Rahim nodded. "That's the thing about arrogance. It doesn't see, it assumes. You saw a uniform and thought it defined a man's worth. But tell me, what would you have done differently if you had known I was the owner?" Daniel swallowed hard. His voice was smaller now, stripped of performance. I guess I would have treated you better." Rahim tilted his head slightly. "And that is the problem. You respect position, not people. Titles fade, clothes change, but character stays. You never know who's watching or who you're speaking to, not just in restaurants, but in life." Sanaa exhaled softly, her eyes shining with both awe and quiet sadness. Around them, guests exchanged glances, admiration for Rahim's dignity, discomfort for their own silence during the insults. A few even lowered their heads, realizing they too had judged someone too quickly at some point in their lives. Daniel looked down at the table, his bravado shattered. "I didn't mean—" "You did," Rahim interrupted gently. "You meant every word. You believed every gesture. And that's what makes this lesson real. I've met many people like you, Daniel, powerful on the surface, hollow underneath. I used to be one." That made Daniel look up. "You?" "Yes," Rahim said. "Years ago, I had nothing. I was a young waiter working double shifts. I was tired, angry, and bitter. When people looked down on me, I swore that one day I'd be the one giving orders. And eventually I was. I built this place from the ground up, from borrowed money, sleepless nights, and mistakes that nearly cost me everything. But success means nothing if it turns you into what you once hated." The restaurant was utterly still, listening like a living audience to a moral being painted in real time. Rahim continued, voice soft yet powerful. "So I come here once a month, dressed as a waiter, to remind myself and my team that no one in this building is above service. Every job here, from the dishwasher to the chef, keeps this place alive. When you insult one of them, you insult the foundation of what I built." Daniel's friends sat frozen, eyes wide with the discomfort of truth. Sanaa's lips quivered as she whispered, That's beautiful. Daniel's chest ached. Shame burned hot against his face. I didn't know you'd take it that way, he said weakly. Raheem's expression softened slightly. It's not about me. It's about what you carry in you. You came here to prove something, to be seen, to be admired. But you leave seen for the wrong reasons. Ask yourself, what do you really gain when you put others down? Daniel had no answer. For the first time that night, he couldn't hide behind laughter or pride. He looked around, at the people watching, at the waiters who now stood with quiet strength, at Sanaa whose eyes held disappointment. The realization cut deeper than any insult could. Raheem turned to his staff. Everyone, please return to your duties. We still have guests to serve. The team nodded, proud and composed, dispersing with silent reverence. As they moved, the atmosphere began to breathe again. The tension didn't vanish, but it shifted, replaced by reflection. Daniel sat in the echo of his choices. The gold watch that had once gleamed so confidently now felt like a chain around his wrist. His voice, once loud, now seemed too heavy to lift. Raheem took a step closer, lowering his tone so only Daniel could hear. You know, my father used to say something. If you ever walk into a room and the first thing you do is look for who's beneath you, you've already told the world who you are. Tonight, you told me who you were, but that doesn't mean you can't become someone better. Daniel's eyes watered, but he blinked it away. Why are you being kind to me after all that? Raheem smiled faintly. Because you've already punished yourself more than I ever could. And because the only real change comes when someone gives you a chance to do better. I'm not here to humiliate you, Daniel. Life will handle that if you don't learn. I'm here to wake you up before it's too late. He turned to leave, but Daniel reached out instinctively. Wait. His voice cracked. I'm sorry. Raheem nodded once. Then prove it. Not to me, to the next person you meet. Daniel dropped his gaze to the floor, his reflection shimmering in the polished marble. He felt small, not because Raheem had made him feel that way, but because he'd realized how big his ego had been. Sanaa placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. You have a choice, she whispered. You can carry the guilt, or you can carry the lesson. He nodded, words still trapped in his throat. Raheem walked toward the entrance, pausing beside a small flower arrangement. Fresh lilies, his late wife's favorite. He adjusted a petal carefully, his hand steady. Everything about him radiated quiet control, the kind that didn't need to prove anything. The pianist, sensing the moment, shifted tunes again. This time, something soft and forgiving. The music filled the air like a sigh of release. Daniel stood slowly, his knees weak. The restaurant that had once felt like his stage now felt like a mirror, reflecting every flaw he'd tried to hide. He followed Raheem to the doorway, stopping just behind him. So may I ask something? Raheem turned slightly. Of course. How did you forgive the people who made you feel the way I did tonight? Raheem thought for a moment before answering. I didn't do it for them. I did it for myself. Carrying hate is like drinking poison and waiting for the other person to die. I chose peace because it's lighter to carry. Daniel swallowed the lump in his throat. I want to learn that. Then start small, Raheem said. Say thank you when it's easiest to ignore. Say I'm sorry when it's hardest to mean it. And never walk into a room thinking you're more important than the person who opens the door for you. That's where real success begins. With that, Raheem gave a small nod and stepped outside, the night air embracing him like an old friend. The sound of the city buzzed softly beyond the glass doors. Cars, laughter, life moving forward. Daniel stood there for a long time, watching Raheem disappear into the night. The weight in his chest shifted, heavy but strangely cleansing. Sanaa joined him quietly, and for once he didn't speak. He just listened to the fading notes of the piano, to the quiet chatter of people returning to their meals, to the pulse of humility beginning to beat where arrogance had once lived. 2 weeks later, the restaurant gleamed under the golden afternoon light, its glass doors reflecting the gentle bustle of the street outside. Inside, the world had returned to its rhythm. Waiters moved gracefully between tables, laughter floated across the room, and the piano, as always, played softly in the background. Yet something was different. Among the regulars, a familiar face appeared, quieter this time, humbler, almost hesitant. It was Daniel. He stood near the entrance, holding a small bouquet of white lilies, awkwardly, as if unsure what to do with them. His suit was the same, but the man wearing it wasn't. Gone was the swagger, the arrogance. In its place stood someone searching for redemption. The hostess recognized him and offered a polite, cautious smile. "Good afternoon, sir. Table for one?" Daniel nodded. "Yes, please, if that's okay." "Of course. Would you like your usual table?" He hesitated. "No, somewhere near the kitchen, if possible." The hostess blinked, surprised, but led him to a small corner table, one he would have mocked before for being too close to the staff area. Now it felt right. From here, he could see everything. The waiters working in sync, the chef calling out orders, the hum of a world he once disrespected. When his server arrived, Daniel stood slightly. "Before we begin, I just want to say thank you for what you do. All of you. It matters." The waiter, a young man about Arif's age, smiled, puzzled but touched. "Thank you, sir. I'll let the team know." As the meal began, Daniel didn't rush. He watched. He listened. Every detail that once escaped his notice, the rhythm of footsteps, the teamwork, the patience, now seemed sacred. He remembered Raheem's words. Character doesn't come from what you have, but how you treat those who have less. Halfway through his meal, he noticed movement near the bar. Mr. Raheem had entered quietly, as he always did. No entourage, no announcement, just presence. He was speaking with the manager, checking the day's reports. Then his gaze drifted across the room and landed on Daniel. For a moment, neither man moved. Then Raheem offered a small nod. Not as an owner, not as a victor, but as a human being acknowledging another who had chosen to grow. Daniel stood, heart pounding, and walked over slowly. "Mr. Raheem," he said, his voice steady but humble. Raheem turned fully, a faint smile appearing. "Daniel, it's good to see you. I wasn't sure you'd remember me." Raheem's eyes twinkled. "Some lessons, Daniel. Don't let you forget the teacher or the student." Daniel laughed softly, a sound carrying both guilt and gratitude. "I came to apologize again, properly this time. Not just in words, but in action." Raheem gestured for him to sit. "Then let's hear it." Daniel took a deep breath. "After that night, I went home angry, not at you, but at myself. I realized that the person I had become was built on insecurity. I treated people badly because I thought that made me important, but it didn't. It made me small. So, I've been trying to fix that." "How so?" Raheem asked gently. Daniel smiled faintly. "I started by apologizing to my team at work. I even gave my driver a week off with pay, told him to spend time with his family. I didn't realize how much he worked until I actually listened. And then, I visited my parents. I hadn't done that in months." Raheem nodded slowly. "It sounds like you've been busy rebuilding something far more important than reputation." "Maybe," Daniel said. "I just know I don't want to be that man again." The pianist shifted to a mellow jazz tune, warm and steady. The world seemed softer around them. Daniel reached for the lilies beside him and offered them to Raheem. "For your wife," he said quietly. "I heard from one of your staff she loved these." Raheem accepted the flowers with a gentle smile. "She did. Thank you. She always said lilies were a reminder that even things born in mud can bloom pure." They both sat in reflective silence for a moment, the kind that needed no words. Raheem leaned forward slightly. "Tell me, Daniel, do you remember what you said to me that night, when you thought I was just a waiter?" Daniel exhaled, embarrassed. "Every word. And I wish I could take them back." "Don't," Raheem said. "Keep them. Not as regret, but as a reminder. Those words built this version of you. The one who walked back here today." Daniel's eyes softened. "You're not angry with me?" Raheem chuckled quietly. "Anger is expensive, Daniel. I've learned to spend my energy elsewhere. Besides, the man standing in front of me now isn't the same one who walked in that night. That's enough for me." Daniel felt emotion rise in his chest, raw and unfiltered. "You don't know how much that means." "I think I do," Raheem said. "Because once upon a time, I was the one asking for forgiveness too." A server passed by, and Raheem stopped him briefly. "2 coffees, please." "My treat." Daniel smiled. You're still serving, even as the owner. Rahim grinned. Some habits build character. Others remind us who we are. Service does both. When the coffee arrived, they talked, not about money or success or status, but about life, about struggle, about how easy it is to lose perspective when success blinds you. Rahim shared stories of the early days, washing dishes, sleeping on benches, saving every tip. Daniel listened intently, not out of politeness, but genuine admiration. I always thought people like you were just lucky, Daniel admitted. But it's not luck, is it? Rahim shook his head. Luck visits everyone, but it only stays with those who respect the moment it arrives. Daniel smiled, eyes glistening. I wish I'd met you sooner. You met me exactly when you needed to, Rahim said softly. If it had been sooner, you wouldn't have listened. They both laughed quietly, two men from different worlds, now standing on the same ground of humility. When it was time to leave, Daniel stood and extended his hand. Rahim shook it firmly, then placed his other hand over Daniel's. Keep doing better, he said. Not to prove me wrong, but to prove yourself right. Daniel nodded. I will. And thank you for not giving up on people like me. Rahim smiled, eyes warm. If I gave up on people, I'd be giving up on who I used to be. As Daniel stepped outside, the late afternoon sun brushed his face. He turned back once more, looking through the glass. Rahim standing near the counter, speaking to his staff, laughing softly. He realized that true power wasn't loud. It was calm. It was kind. It was invisible until needed. He walked down the street, each step lighter than the last. The world looked different now, not smaller or less glamorous, but more real. Every person he passed felt significant. The man sweeping the sidewalk, the woman selling flowers, the young boy holding his mother's hand. They weren't background characters anymore. They were stories. That night, Daniel sat at home and wrote a note on a small card. It read, To the man who taught me that humility is wealth, kindness is power, and respect is the only true currency that never loses value. He placed it inside an envelope addressed simply, For Mr. Rahim, the waiter who was the real owner.